The rain hammered against our kitchen window like an impatient debt collector, and my wife Lena stood there dripping designer water all over our hardwood floor, smiling that practiced smile she reserved for clients and suckers. I could smell a lie faster than a gas leak, and my marriage was about to blow. "How was the conference, sweetheart?" I asked, leaning against the counter with my coffee mug, watching her fumble with her phone. She'd been gone 3 days to Chicago, supposedly learning about corporate litigation strategies. Funny thing about lies, they always leave breadcrumbs. "Exhausting," she said, not meeting my eyes. "You know how these things are. Boring presentations, terrible hotel food, networking until midnight." I nodded sympathetically while my brain cataloged every tell. The way she touched her neck when she mentioned the hotel, how her voice pitched higher on midnight, the fact that she hadn't hugged me yet. After 15 years of marriage, I knew Lena's deception patterns better than she did. "Well, you'll be happy to know I kept busy while you were gone," I said, gesturing toward the small black cameras now mounted in our hallway, living room, and kitchen. Had Tom's security company install a complete system, motion sensors, night vision, the works, for our safety. Her face flickered, just for a microsecond, but I caught it. That little twitch around her left eye that meant her lawyer brain was calculating risk. "That's nice, Evan. But don't you think you should have discussed it with me first?" She set down her purse with deliberate care, the way she did everything when she was buying time to think. "I tried calling, but you were always in meetings," I replied, watching her process this information. "Besides, I figured you'd appreciate the peace of mind, especially with all those break-ins in the Riverside neighborhood." There hadn't been any break-ins in Riverside, but Lena didn't know that. She was too busy climbing the ladder at Morrison, Keller, and Associates to pay attention to local crime statistics. Too busy, apparently, to notice that her husband wasn't quite the trusting fool she'd married. "My name is Evan Mitchell, and I'm a mechanical engineer at Precision Dynamics, which means I solve problems for a living. I design systems that work flawlessly under pressure, components that fit together so perfectly that failure becomes impossible. It's satisfying work, even if it doesn't pay enough to keep up with my wife's expensive tastes. Lena, on the other hand, is what you might call a social engineer. She manipulates people the way I manipulate metal and circuits, bending them to her will with the right combination of pressure and precision. The difference is, my machines don't lie to me." "I'm going to shower," she announced, already heading for the stairs. "This rain has me chilled to the bone." I watched her go, noting how she clutched her phone like a lifeline. Most people don't realize how much their devices reveal about them. Location data, app usage, even deleted messages leave traces if you know where to look. And thanks to my friend Tom's expertise in corporate security, I'd learned quite a bit about digital forensics over the past month. Tom Rodriguez, no wait, that name's off limits. Tom Sullivan. He runs a small but efficient security firm that specializes in corporate espionage prevention. We'd been friends since high school, back when he was planning to be a cop, and I was taking apart every electronic device I could get my hands on. Life had taken us in different directions, but we'd stayed close. Close enough that when I started suspecting my wife was playing games, Tom was the first person I called. "Marriage problems?" he'd asked when I showed up at his office 3 weeks ago. "Information problems," I'd corrected. "I need to know what I'm dealing with before I make any decisions." Tom had studied me for a long moment, his weathered face serious. "You sure you want to go down this road, Evan? Sometimes ignorance really is bliss." But I'd already made my choice. In engineering, we have a saying, trust but verify. I'd been doing too much trusting and not enough verifying. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The shower started upstairs, and I pulled out my laptop. The software Tom had helped me install was elegant in its simplicity, a mirror image of Lena's phone that updated in real time. Every text, every call, every app she opened appeared on my screen within seconds. It was probably illegal, definitely unethical, and absolutely necessary. Her message history with someone named Miles Brennan made for fascinating reading. "Can't wait to see you again," from last Tuesday. Room 412, Marriott downtown, from Wednesday morning. "Evan's getting suspicious. We need to be more careful," from this afternoon. Miles Brennan, senior partner at Morrison, Keller, and Associates. Married to Patricia Brennan, 2 kids in private school, drives a BMW that costs more than my annual salary. I'd met him exactly once, at the firm's Christmas party last year. Tall, silver-haired, the kind of confident smile that comes from never having to worry about mortgage payments. He'd shaken my hand and immediately forgotten my name, which was fine by me. I prefer being underestimated. The shower shut off upstairs, and I closed the laptop. Time to start laying some groundwork. Feeling better? I asked when Lena came down in her bathrobe, hair wrapped in a towel. Much? She moved to the refrigerator, keeping her back to me. What do you want for dinner? I could order something. Actually, I was thinking we could go out tomorrow night. That new place downtown, Elevation, I heard they have a great rooftop bar. She went very still. Elevation was where she and Miles had been photographed together last month, according to her credit card statement. The same rooftop bar she'd supposedly never heard of. I don't really feel like going out, she said carefully. Maybe we could just stay in, watch a movie. Come on, Lena. When's the last time we did something fun together? Besides, I've never been to a rooftop bar. Might be nice to see the city from up there. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head. Was this a trap? Did I know something? How much should she risk? Maybe next week, she said finally. I'm still tired from the trip. Of course, no rush. I stood up and kissed her cheek, noting how she tensed at my touch. I'm just happy you're home safe. But as I headed upstairs to my workshop, I was already planning my next move. The security cameras were just the beginning. If Lena wanted to play games, I'd show her what a real strategist looked like. After all, I'd been building traps my whole career. I just usually used them to catch mechanical failures instead of cheating wives. My workshop occupied the converted garage, a cluttered sanctuary of tools, circuit boards, and half-finished projects. This was where I came to think, to create, to solve the unsolvable. Tonight, I had a new kind of problem to work on. I pulled up the building schematics for Morrison, Keller, and Associates on my computer. Public records, perfectly legal to access. The firm occupied 3 floors of a downtown office building, with Lena's office on the 2nd floor and the senior partners on the 3rd. Miles Brennan's corner office had a nice view of the river and probably cost more to furnish than most people's houses. My phone buzzed with a text from Tom. Package delivered, instructions attached. The package was a small device that looked like a standard USB charging cable, but contained some very non-standard electronics. Corporate espionage wasn't Tom's usual business, but he owed me a favor from when I'd helped him debug his company's alarm system. Plus, he'd never liked Lena much anyway. She's got ice water in her veins, he'd said after meeting her at our wedding. Pretty, smart, ambitious. But watch yourself, Evan. That woman's got plans, and I'm not sure you're in them. I'd laughed it off at the time. Young love makes fools of us all. But Tom had been right about Lena's ambition. She'd clawed her way up from a small-town nobody to a respected attorney in 15 years, and she hadn't let anything or anyone slow her down, including her husband. The workshop door creaked, and I looked up to see Lena standing in the doorway, still in her bathrobe. "What are you working on?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "Just some schematics for a client project." I minimized the window and turned to face her. Boring technical stuff. You wouldn't be interested. She nodded, but her eyes were scanning my workbench, looking for... What? Evidence? Proof of suspicion? I kept my expression neutral, the same mild smile I'd worn for 15 years of marriage. "I'm going to bed," she said. "Don't stay up too late." "I'll be up soon. Just want to finish this calculation." After she left, I sat back in my chair and considered my options. I could confront her directly, demand the truth, maybe salvage something from the wreckage of our marriage. That would be the mature, reasonable approach. Or I could do what I do best, engineer a solution. I opened my laptop and started typing. The next morning dawned gray and miserable, which matched my mood perfectly. Lena had already left for work by the time I came downstairs, leaving nothing but the lingering scent of her expensive perfume and a coffee mug in the sink. She'd always been an early riser, but lately she'd been leaving earlier and coming home later. Building a case, she called it. Building something anyway. I poured myself coffee and checked the security system's overnight logs. Motion detected in the kitchen at 6:15 a.m. Front door opened at 6:32 a.m. Lena's morning routine captured in digital precision. The cameras were working perfectly, but they were just the opening move in a much larger game. My phone rang as I was getting dressed for work. Tom's name appeared on the screen. "Oh, morning, sunshine," he said when I answered. "How's married life treating you?" "Like a puzzle with half the pieces missing," I replied. "Please tell me you have good news." "Depends on your definition of good. I ran that background check on Miles Brennan like you asked. Interesting guy. Clean record, solid reputation, but he's got some expensive habits. Country club membership, luxury car lease, private school tuition for 2 kids. His wife Patricia comes from money, but word is she keeps him on a tight leash financially." "Motive," I said, understanding immediately. Lena's not just an affair, she's an investment opportunity. That's my read. A successful attorney wife could solve a lot of his cash flow problems, especially if she's ambitious enough to make senior partner herself someday. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Not just betrayal, but calculated betrayal. Lena hadn't fallen for another man. She'd entered a business arrangement. There's more, Tom continued. I had a friend at the phone company pull some records. Brennan's been calling your wife for 3 months, not just the past few weeks. This isn't some sudden romance, Evan. They've been planning this. 3 months. While I'd been working late on the Henderson project, trying to earn enough overtime to pay for the kitchen renovation Lena wanted. While I'd been researching vacation destinations for our anniversary trip. While I'd been living in a marriage that had apparently ended before I even knew it was in trouble. You still there? Tom asked. Yeah, just processing. I sat down heavily on the bed. What's my next move? That depends. You want to lawyer up, file for divorce, try to save what you can? Or are you thinking about something more creative? Tom knew me well enough to recognize the tone in my voice. I wasn't looking for legal advice or marriage counseling. I was looking for justice, the kind that comes with interest and penalties. Creative, I said. Definitely creative. Then you're going to need more evidence, court-admissible evidence, and you're going to need to be very careful about how you get it. After Tom hung up, I sat in my bedroom for a long time, looking at the framed wedding photo on Lena's nightstand. We looked so young, so happy, so convinced that we were building something permanent. I wondered when exactly she'd decided I wasn't enough anymore. When had I become an obstacle instead of a partner? But self-pity wouldn't solve my problem. Action would. I drove to work through the morning traffic, my mind churning with possibilities. Precision Dynamics occupied a converted warehouse on the industrial side of town, all exposed brick and steel beams. Not glamorous, but functional. Like me. You look like hell, said Janet Kowalski, our office manager, when I walked in. Janet was 62, had been married to the same man for 40 years, and possessed an almost supernatural ability to read people's moods. Just tired, I said. Long night working on schematics. Uh-huh. She gave me a look that said she wasn't buying it. Coffee's fresh. And that Henderson project you've been obsessing over? Final approval came through this morning. Congratulations. The Henderson project. 6 months of 12-hour days, weekend work, and stress-induced headaches, all to design a more efficient cooling system for their manufacturing plant. The bonus would be substantial, enough to pay for that kitchen renovation and maybe a nice vacation. Too bad my wife was planning to take her vacation with someone else. I spent the morning going through the motions of normal work, but my mind was elsewhere. During lunch, I drove downtown to the Morrison, Keller & Associates building. 15 floors of glass and steel, the kind of place that screamed success and ambition. Lena's natural habitat. The lobby was all marble and polished chrome, with a security desk manned by a bored-looking guard. I approached with my most harmless smile. Hi, I'm here to surprise my wife with lunch, I told him. Lena Mitchell, second floor? He checked his computer screen. I don't see her on the directory. Oh, she might still be listed under her maiden name. Lena Carter? Nope, no Carter either. Interesting. Maybe she's with one of the partners? I know she works closely with Miles Brennan. The guard's expression shifted slightly. Anna, Mr. Brennan's in meetings all afternoon. You might want to call ahead next time. I thanked him and left, but not before noting the locations of the security cameras and the badge reader at the elevator bank. Every building had vulnerabilities if you knew where to look. That evening, I got home before Lena for once. I was in the kitchen, pretending to read the newspaper, when she walked in at 7:30. Sorry I'm late, she said, not sounding sorry at all. Client emergency. You know how it is? Of course. I actually stopped by your office around lunch, thought I'd surprise you. But the security guard said you weren't in. She froze in the act of hanging up her coat. You went to my office? Just wanted to take my beautiful wife to lunch, but don't worry, I didn't embarrass you or anything. The guard said you might have been in meetings with Miles Brennan. I was in court all afternoon, she said quickly. Deposition for the Hartley case. The guard must have been confused. Another lie, delivered with the same practiced ease as all the others. But this one was sloppy. If she'd been in court, there would be a public record. If she'd been in a deposition, there would be a court reporter, witnesses, documentation. Well, maybe next time, I said mildly. How about we order pizza tonight? I'm too tired to cook. We ate dinner in relative silence, both of us absorbed in our phones. Lena was texting someone, her fingers flying over the screen with urgent precision. Every few minutes, she'd glance up at me, as if checking to see whether I was paying attention. I was paying attention to everything. After dinner, I retreated to my workshop while Lena settled in to watch television. The device Tom had given me was still in its packaging, waiting for the right opportunity. It looked innocent enough, just a USB charging cable that could be plugged into any computer, but once connected, it would create a backdoor into the entire network, allowing remote access to files, emails, and security systems. Corporate espionage in a neat little package. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. She's at the Marriott downtown, room 412, same as last week. Tom's contact at the hotel, earning his consulting fee. I looked at the timestamp. 8:47 p.m. Lena was upstairs watching her crime drama, texting her lover while her husband sat 20 feet below, planning his revenge. The irony was almost poetic. I spent the next 2 hours researching Miles Brennan's digital footprint. Social media profiles, professional associations, property records, court filings. The man lived his life in public, confident that his position and reputation made him untouchable. That confidence was about to become a liability. By the time I went upstairs, Lena was already in bed, apparently asleep, but her breathing was too controlled, too regular. She was faking it, probably wondering how much I knew and how much I suspected. She was about to find out. I lay in the dark next to my wife, listening to her pretend to sleep, and finalized my plans. Tomorrow, I would start gathering the evidence I needed, not just for a divorce attorney, but for something much more satisfying. In engineering, we call it stress testing, applying pressure until you find the breaking point. Every material has one, every system has a failure threshold, even people, especially people. Thursday morning brought the first break in the weather we'd seen all week. Sunshine streamed through our bedroom window as Lena got ready for work, humming softly to herself. She seemed almost cheerful, which probably meant she was planning something. "I might be late tonight," she said, applying lipstick in the bathroom mirror. Partner meeting about the Jameson acquisition. Could run until 9 or 10. "On a Thursday?" I asked from the bed, where I was pretending to check emails on my phone. "You know how these corporate deals are. Time sensitive." She capped the lipstick and turned to face me. "Don't wait up." I nodded and smiled, the perfect understanding husband, but I was already mentally composing a text to Tom's hotel contact. If Lena was meeting Miles tonight, I wanted documentation. After she left, I called in sick to work. Something I rarely did, but desperate times called for creative measures. I had reconnaissance to conduct. The Morrison, Keller, and Associates building looked different in the morning light. Less imposing, more like what it actually was, an office building full of people trying to make money by solving other people's problems. I parked across the street and settled in to watch the patterns. Employees started arriving around 8:30. I recognized Lena's silver sedan pulling into the parking garage at 8:45, right on schedule. Miles Brennan's BMW arrived 10 minutes later, which seemed like reasonable deniability spacing. At 10:15, I walked into the building carrying a clipboard and wearing my most official-looking polo shirt. The security guard barely glanced up. "IT support," I announced. "Got a report of network issues on the second floor." He waved me toward the elevator without interest. Amazing how a clipboard and confident attitude could open doors. The second floor was a maze of cubicles and glass-walled offices, all beige carpet and motivational posters. I found Lena's office easily enough. Her nameplate read, L. Mitchell, Associate Attorney. Through the window, I could see her at her desk, talking on the phone with animated gestures. Her computer was a standard desktop model, probably connected to the firm's main server. Perfect for what I had in mind. I waited until she left for what looked like a coffee run, then slipped inside. The door was unlocked. Lawyers, apparently, weren't as security conscious as engineers. Tom's device plugged into the USB port on the back of her monitor, hidden behind a tangle of cables where no one would notice it. 30 seconds in, 30 seconds out. Professional-grade infiltration. I was back in my car when my phone buzzed with a confirmation message from Tom. Package online, full access established. Phase 1 complete. That afternoon, I drove to the Riverside Mall and bought a small digital camera with a telephoto lens. Nothing fancy, just good enough for documentation purposes. Then I visited an electronics store and picked up a few items that would be useful for Phase 2 of my plan. By 6 p.m., I was positioned in the parking garage across from the Marriott downtown, camera ready. If Lena was meeting Miles tonight, I wanted pictures that would hold up in court. And more importantly, pictures that would be very embarrassing if they ever became public. At 7:20, Miles Brennan's BMW pulled into the hotel's valet parking. He emerged wearing an expensive suit and the kind of confident smile that came from never having to worry about consequences. The valet took his keys with the deference reserved for big tippers. Lena arrived 15 minutes later in her sedan, parking in the self-service garage like someone trying to avoid being noticed. She'd changed clothes since morning. Gone was the conservative business suit, replaced by a black dress that was definitely not appropriate for a partner meeting. I snapped photos as she walked through the lobby, as she waited for the elevator, as she checked her phone one last time before the doors closed. Digital evidence with timestamps and metadata that would be very difficult to explain away. Then I waited. They emerged 2 hours later, separately but within 10 minutes of each other. Miles first, looking satisfied and checking his watch. Lena second, looking around nervously, as if she expected to see someone she knew. She should have been more careful about that instinct. I followed her home at a discreet distance, arriving just minutes after she did. She was in the shower when I came inside, washing away the evidence of her evening activities. "How was the partner meeting?" I called through the bathroom door. "Boring," she called back. "Lots of financial projections and timeline discussions. I'm exhausted." "I'll bet," I thought, uploading the photos to my laptop. Friday morning, I put Phase 2 into motion. The device in Lena's computer had given me access to the firm's entire network, including email servers and client databases. I wasn't interested in confidential client information. That would be genuinely unethical. But personnel files, internal communications, and financial records were fair game. Miles Brennan's email history made for fascinating reading. The man was sloppy with digital security, probably assuming that his position made him immune to scrutiny. His correspondence with Lena went back 4 months, starting with legitimate work discussions and gradually becoming more personal. Dinner meeting to discuss the Patterson case? Looking forward to working more closely with you. Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more private. A masterclass in workplace seduction, documented in corporate email. But the really interesting messages were the ones from the past month, where they'd started discussing logistics. E is getting suspicious. We need to be more careful about timing. Maybe it's time to accelerate our timeline. I spoke to Patricia's attorney. She's willing to settle for 60% if we move quickly. Patricia, Miles's wife. They were planning to divorce their respective spouses and merge their lives like a corporate acquisition. Lena would get half of whatever I'd accumulated over 15 years of marriage. Miles would get out from under his wife's financial control, and together they'd build their power couple empire. It was actually quite clever, in a sociopathic sort of way. But they'd made one crucial error. They'd underestimated the opposition. I spent Friday afternoon crafting my response. Not a confrontation, that would only put them on guard. Something more subtle, more psychological. I wanted them to start making mistakes, to feel pressure without understanding where it was coming from. I started with Miles's car. The BMW was parked in his reserved space in the firm's parking garage, protected by security cameras and electronic locks. But security systems were just puzzles waiting to be solved, and I'd been solving puzzles my entire career. The parking garage had a blind spot near the stairwell, probably an oversight by whoever had designed the camera placement. I slipped in during the lunch rush, when foot traffic would mask my presence. Miles's car was beautiful, midnight blue with leather interior and enough electronic gadgets to run a small space program. It probably cost more than I made in a year. Such a shame what happened to it. I didn't damage anything, of course. That would be criminal mischief. Instead, I made some minor adjustments that would be more annoying than destructive. Loosened the valve stems on his tires just enough to cause a slow leak. Adjusted his seat and mirror positions. Programmed his radio to a country music station and turned the volume up. Petty? Absolutely. Satisfying? More than I'd expected. But the real masterpiece was the air freshener I left under his passenger seat. Pine-scented, completely innocent, except for the small modification I'd made. Inside the cardboard backing was a tiny GPS tracker, the kind used for fleet management. Now I'd know exactly where Miles went and when he went there. Knowledge is power, and I was accumulating quite a bit of both. That evening, Lena came home in a strange mood, distracted and slightly nervous, as if something had disrupted her usual routine. "Everything okay?" I asked as we sat down to dinner. "Fine, just work stress." She pushed food around her plate without eating much. "Miles had some kind of car trouble today, delayed our client meeting." "That's frustrating. What kind of trouble?" "I don't know. Something about the tires and the radio acting up. He seemed really annoyed about it." I made sympathetic noises while internally celebrating my first small victory. Miles was already off balance, wondering if his car problems were coincidence or something more deliberate. Paranoia was a useful tool when applied correctly. After dinner, I retreated to my workshop to plan the next phase. The GPS tracker was already providing useful data. Miles's daily routine, his favorite restaurants, his weekend habits, information I could use to stay one step ahead. But I needed something bigger, something that would really shake their confidence. I needed to make them understand that their secret wasn't as secret as they thought. I opened my laptop and started typing an anonymous email. "Mr. Brennan," it began, "you might want to be more careful about your extracurricular activities. Not everyone is as discreet as you think you are." I attached one of the photos from Thursday night. Nothing explicit, just Miles entering the Marriott with a timestamp. Enough to let him know he was being watched, not enough to be considered blackmail. I sent it from a disposable email account, routed through several proxy servers to mask the origin. Untraceable, but unmistakably threatening. Then I sat back and waited for the chaos to begin. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made everything seem possible. I was in the kitchen making coffee when my phone buzzed with a text from Tom. "Your friend got your message. Spent 20 minutes in the hotel lobby yesterday looking over his shoulder. Want me to keep monitoring?" I smiled and typed back, "Absolutely. This is just getting started." Lena was still asleep upstairs, which gave me time to check the overnight surveillance footage. The security system I'd installed was proving more useful than she realized. Every conversation, every phone call, every moment of suspicious behavior was being recorded and stored on a secure server. Last night had been particularly interesting. Around 11 p.m., Lena had received a phone call that sent her into the bathroom with the door locked, speaking in urgent whispers for nearly 30 minutes. The audio was muffled, but I'd caught enough fragments to understand the topic. Damage control. Miles was panicking about the anonymous email, and Lena was trying to calm him down. They'd agreed to lay low for a while, avoid public meetings, communicate only through encrypted messaging apps. All the behavior of people who knew they were being hunted. Good. Fear made people sloppy. I was reviewing the footage when Lena came downstairs, already dressed and carrying her purse. "Going somewhere?" I asked. "Shopping with Patricia Brennan," she said, not meeting my eyes. "She called last night. Wants to look at furniture for their guest room." Patricia Brennan. Miles's wife, who according to the email intercepts was planning to divorce him and take 60% of their assets. Either Lena was lying about the shopping trip, or she was playing a much deeper game than I'd realized. "That's nice," I said. "I didn't know you two were friends." "We're not really, but she's been reaching out lately, trying to be more social. I think she's lonely. Or she's suspicious about her husband's behavior and wants to interrogate his suspected mistress," I thought. Either way, this could get interesting. After Lena left, I decided to do some shopping of my own. The electronics store downtown had exactly what I needed, a small wireless transmitter that could be hidden almost anywhere and would broadcast audio to a receiver within a half-mile radius. I also picked up a prepaid cell phone and a voice modulator app. If I was going to escalate this psychological warfare, I needed better tools. The GPS tracker in Miles's car showed him at the country club, probably playing golf and pretending his world wasn't falling apart. I drove over to his neighborhood, a gated community called Riverside Estates, where the houses started at $500,000 and went up from there. Miles's house was a colonial revival with perfectly manicured landscaping and a 3-car garage, the kind of place that screamed "successful attorney" to anyone driving by. I parked down the street and used my telephoto lens to scout the property. The mailbox was at the end of the driveway, easily accessible from the street. The garbage cans were positioned near the garage, probably emptied on Tuesday mornings. Multiple entry points, minimal security, neighbors far enough away to provide privacy. I wasn't planning a break-in, of course. That would be illegal. But understanding the target environment was crucial for what came next. My phone rang as I was driving home. Unknown number, which meant it was probably important. "Hello?" I answered. "Evan Mitchell." The voice was female, middle-aged, with a slight southern accent. "Speaking." "This is Patricia Brennan. I believe you know my husband, Miles?" "Interesting. Very interesting. We've met once or twice. Is everything okay?" "I was hoping we could talk. In person, if possible. There are some things about our respective spouses that I think you should know." My heart rate spiked. Patricia knew about the affair, and she was ready to compare notes. This was either the best possible development or a trap designed to expose my surveillance activities. "I'm free this afternoon," I said carefully. "Where would you like to meet?" "There's a coffee shop called Grind on 5th Street. 2 o'clock? I'll be there." I spent the next 3 hours preparing for what could be the most important conversation of this entire operation. Patricia Brennan was either a potential ally or a dangerous enemy, and I needed to figure out which one before I revealed too much. Grind was a hipster coffee shop with exposed brick walls and mismatched furniture, the kind of place where nobody would pay attention to two middle-aged people having an intense conversation. I arrived 10 minutes early and chose a corner table with a good view of the entrance. Patricia walked in at exactly 2 o'clock. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with blonde hair and the kind of understated elegance that came from good breeding and expensive clothes. She looked around the room once, spotted me immediately, and walked over with the confidence of someone used to being in control. "Evan," she said, extending her hand. "Thank you for meeting me on such short notice." "Of course. Can I get you something to drink?" "Coffee, black, and maybe some answers if you're willing to provide them." Direct. I could respect that. I got her coffee and returned to the table, where she was studying me with the kind of analytical gaze I recognized from my own mirror. We were both trying to read each other, figure out motivations and weaknesses. "How long have you known?" she asked without preamble. "About a month," I said. "You?" 6 weeks. I hired a private investigator after Miles started working late every night and coming home smelling like perfume that wasn't mine. "What did you find?" She pulled out her phone and showed me a series of photographs. Miles and Lena at various restaurants, hotels, and bars around the city, professional quality surveillance photos with timestamps and location data. "Quite a lot," she said. "The question is, what are we going to do about it?" I studied her face, looking for signs of deception or manipulation. But all I saw was cold, calculating anger, the same emotion I'd been feeling for the past month. "What did you have in mind?" I asked. Patricia smiled, and for the first time since this whole mess started, I felt like I might have found an ally. "I want to destroy them," she said simply. "Financially, professionally, socially. I want them to lose everything they've worked for, everything they think they deserve. And I think you might be exactly the right person to help me do it." She was right. I was exactly the right person for that job. We spent the next 2 hours planning what Patricia called mutually assured destruction, and what I preferred to think of as applied engineering principles. She had money, connections, and a ruthless streak that would make a corporate raider proud. I had technical skills, surveillance equipment, and a growing collection of compromising evidence. Together, we were going to give Miles and Lena a masterclass in consequences. "There's one thing you should know," Patricia said as we prepared to leave. "Miles has been planning to leave me for months. He's been hiding assets, setting up separate accounts, even consulting with divorce attorneys. This isn't just an affair, it's a hostile takeover of both our lives." "Lena's been doing the same thing," I admitted. "I found emails about accelerating their timeline, discussions about settlement percentages. They're treating us like obstacles to be removed. Then we'll show them what real obstacles look like." As I drove home, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Optimism. Not about saving my marriage. That was clearly beyond salvation. But about taking control of the situation, about turning the tables on two people who thought they were smarter than everyone else. Miles and Lena had made one crucial error in their planning. They'd assumed their targets would be passive, that we'd simply accept our fates and move on with whatever scraps they left us. They were about to learn how wrong they'd been. Sunday morning brought an unexpected gift. Lena's phone rang at 8 a.m. and I could hear Miles's panicked voice through the speaker from across the kitchen. "We need to meet," he was saying. "Something's happened. Someone knows." Lena glanced at me, then stepped into the hallway for privacy. But the security system I'd installed had microphones in every room, and her whispered conversation was being recorded in perfect digital clarity. "What do you mean someone knows?" she hissed. "I got another message last night. Photos this time. Us at the restaurant on Tuesday, going into the hotel on Thursday. Whoever's doing this has been following us for weeks." "Did you call the police?" "And tell them what? That someone's documenting my affair? They'd laugh me out of the building." Smart man. Stupid, but smart enough to understand his legal position. "We need to figure out who's behind this," Lena said. "It has to be someone with access to both of us, someone who knows our schedules." "Your husband?" "Evan doesn't have the imagination for something like this. He's an engineer, not a spy." I smiled at that. She was about to discover just how imaginative engineers could be when properly motivated. They agreed to meet at a restaurant across town, somewhere they'd never been before. But thanks to the GPS tracker in Miles's car, I knew exactly where they were going and when they'd be there. I called Patricia from my workshop. "They're spooked, meeting at Romano's on West Side at 10:30. "Perfect. I'll be ready." Patricia's plan was elegantly simple. She was going to confront them publicly, in front of witnesses, with enough evidence to destroy any remaining credibility they had. But first, we needed to position ourselves for maximum impact. I arrived at Romano's at 10:15 and took a table near the back, close enough to observe but far enough away to avoid immediate recognition. The restaurant was busy with the Sunday brunch crowd. Perfect cover for what was about to happen. Miles and Lena arrived separately, as usual, and took a corner booth where they thought they'd have privacy. They looked nervous, constantly checking their phones and glancing around the room. They should have been more paranoid. At exactly 11 o'clock, Patricia made her entrance. She'd dressed for the occasion, a black suit that screamed expensive attorney, and heels that clicked like gunshots on the tile floor. Every head in the restaurant turned to watch her walk to Miles and Lena's table. "Hello, darling," she said to Miles, her voice carrying clearly across the room. "Fancy meeting you here?" Miles went pale. Lena looked confused, then terrified as she realized who Patricia was. "Patricia?" Miles stammered. "What are you doing here?" "Having brunch with friends," she said sweetly. "Though I have to say, I'm surprised to see you here. Didn't you tell me you were playing golf with clients this morning?" The surrounding tables had gone quiet, sensing drama. Patricia had perfectly judged the audience. Upscale restaurant, professional crowd, people who would remember this scene and talk about it for weeks. "We were just discussing a case," Lena said, finding her voice. "Work meeting." "Of course you were." Patricia pulled out her phone and placed it on the table. "Is this the case you were discussing on Thursday night at the Marriott? Or maybe the one from last Tuesday at Chez Laurent?" She started scrolling through photos, each one more damaging than the last. Miles and Lena holding hands across a restaurant table, Miles and Lena entering a hotel together, Miles and Lena kissing in the parking garage of his office building. "Patricia, please," Miles said desperately. "Not here." "Oh, I think here is perfect," she replied. "After all, if you're going to conduct your business meetings in public, the least I can do is attend one of them." By now, half the restaurant was openly staring. Someone had their phone out, probably recording video. This scene would be on social media within hours. "You're making a mistake," Lena said, trying to regain control. "Whatever you think you know." "I know exactly what I know," Patricia interrupted. "I know about the joint bank account you two opened last month. I know about the apartment you've been looking at downtown. I know about the divorce attorney consultations and the asset hiding and the timeline you've been discussing." Miles looked like he was going to be sick. Lena had gone very still, her lawyer brain probably calculating damage and looking for escape routes. "Most of all," Patricia continued, "I know about the emails where you discuss us like we're inconvenient obstacles to be disposed of, where you plan to take our money, our homes, our lives, and use them to fund your little love nest." She stood up, smoothing her skirt with deliberate precision. "Miles, I'll see you in court. Ms. Mitchell, I believe your husband is expecting you home soon. He has some questions about your recent business trips." Then she walked out, leaving behind a restaurant full of witnesses and two people whose secret was now very, very public. I waited 5 minutes before leaving, long enough to see Miles and Lena arguing in urgent whispers while the entire restaurant pretended not to watch them. Their body language screamed panic and recrimination, exactly what I'd hoped for. Phase 3 of my plan was already in motion. That afternoon, I put the final pieces into place. The voice modulator app turned my prepaid phone into an untraceable communication device, and I had several calls to make. The first was to Miles's office. "Morrison, Keller and Associates," the receptionist answered. "I need to speak with someone about Miles Brennan's conduct," I said, the app disguising my voice beyond recognition. "I have information about inappropriate relationships with junior associates. I'll transfer you to our ethics hotline." Perfect. Large law firms took ethics violations seriously, especially when they involved senior partners and potential lawsuits. An anonymous complaint would trigger an internal investigation, putting Miles under professional scrutiny just when he could least afford it. The second call was to Lena's direct supervisor, a senior partner named David Morrison. "Mr. Morrison, I'm calling about Lena Mitchell's billing practices. I have reason to believe she's been charging personal time to client accounts." Another serious allegation that would require investigation. Even if nothing came of it, the suspicion alone would damage her reputation and career prospects. The third call was to the local newspaper's tip line. "I have information about a public confrontation at Romano's restaurant this morning. Might be of interest to your society page." Small-town newspapers loved gossip about local professionals, especially when it involved infidelity and public scenes. The story would be in tomorrow's edition, complete with witness quotes and speculation about the identities of the people involved. By evening, I'd planted seeds of destruction throughout Miles and Lena's professional and social circles. All it would take was time for those seeds to grow into full-scale scandals. Lena came home at 6 o'clock, looking like she'd aged 5 years in one day. She went straight upstairs without speaking, and I could hear her pacing in our bedroom, making phone calls in a voice too low for me to hear clearly. But the security system heard everything. "It's falling apart," she was saying to someone, probably Miles. Patricia knows everything. She had photos, financial records, even copies of our emails somehow. A pause while she listened. No, we can't wait. We need to move now, tonight. Get what we can and disappear before this gets any worse. Another pause. I don't care about the timeline. The timeline just got accelerated by about 6 months. Interesting. They were planning to run, probably to one of those apartments they'd been looking at. But running would only make them look more guilty, more desperate. It would also trigger a dozen different legal and financial consequences they hadn't considered. I went downstairs and poured myself a glass of wine, then settled in to wait. In a few hours, Lena would make her move, and I would be ready for her. After all, I'd been planning for this moment for weeks. Every contingency, every possible escape route, every desperate gambit they might try. In engineering, we call it redundant safety systems. In warfare, it's called overwhelming superiority. In marriage, apparently, it's called divorce. But this wasn't going to be any ordinary divorce. This was going to be a masterpiece of applied consequences, a demonstration of what happened when you underestimated the opposition. Miles and Lena had wanted to play games with people's lives. Now they were going to learn the rules. At 11:47 p.m., Lena made her move. I was in my workshop, supposedly absorbed in a technical manual, when I heard her footsteps on the stairs. Soft, careful steps, the kind people make when they're trying not to wake someone. The security system tracked her movement through the house. Kitchen, living room, back upstairs to our bedroom. Through the wireless audio feed, I could hear drawers opening, hangers sliding, the soft thump of items being packed into luggage. She was taking only essentials, clothes, jewelry, important documents. Smart. Travel light when you're running a con. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Ready when you are, M? Miles, using a burner phone. They'd planned this escape route in advance, probably weeks ago. Have bags packed, transportation arranged, maybe even a safe house picked out where they could lay low until the heat died down. Too bad for them that I'd been planning too. At 12:23 a.m., Lena crept back downstairs with 2 suitcases. I heard the soft beep of the alarm system being disarmed, then the click of the front door opening. Through my workshop window, I could see her loading the bags into her car, moving with the efficient precision of someone who'd rehearsed this scenario. She paused at the driver's door, looking back at the house one last time. Even from a distance, I could see the conflict on her face. Guilt, fear, determination, and something that might have been regret. Then she got in the car and drove away, taking 15 years of marriage with her. I waited exactly 10 minutes before making my first call. Patricia, it's time? I'm ready. Miles left 20 minutes ago with 3 suitcases and his passport. I've already called his credit card companies and frozen the joint accounts. Perfect. Lena just left too. Phase 4 is a go. Phase 4 was the culmination of everything we'd planned. The final move in a chess game that Miles and Lena didn't even realize they were playing. While they thought they were escaping, they were actually walking into the most sophisticated trap I'd ever engineered. The GPS tracker in Miles's car showed him heading toward the interstate, probably planning to pick up Lena at a predetermined meeting point. But I'd done more than just track his movements over the past few weeks. I'd learned his patterns, his preferences, his psychology. Miles Brennan was a creature of habit who liked to be in control. When stressed, he defaulted to familiar behaviors and comfortable environments, which meant he would almost certainly choose the same hotel chain he always used, probably in a city large enough to provide anonymity but close enough to reach quickly. The Marriott in Springfield, 2 hours north. I'd bet my engineering license on it. I was already in my car when Patricia called back. The credit card activity confirms it, she said. Gas station charge in Millfield 30 minutes ago, heading north on I-91. Springfield is the logical destination. I'll meet you there. Remember, documentation is everything. Already handled. I've got a photographer, a process server, and a very expensive divorce attorney on standby. Patricia had connections I could only dream of. Old money, established family, the kind of social network that could destroy reputations with a few well-placed phone calls. When she'd decided to go to war against Miles and Lena, she'd brought professional-grade weapons to the fight. The drive to Springfield gave me time to think about what we were about to do. This wasn't just revenge anymore. It was justice. Miles and Lena had plotted to steal our lives, our money, our futures. They'd treated us like obstacles to be removed, problems to be solved. Now they were about to discover what real problem-solving looked like. I met Patricia in the Marriott parking lot at 2:15 a.m. She'd brought backup, a private investigator named Jake Morrison, who looked like he'd stepped out of a detective novel, complete with rumpled suit and cynical expression. "They're in room 1247, Jake reported. Checked in separately but requested adjoining rooms. Paid cash, used fake names, but the desk clerk recognized Brennan from his photo. "How do you want to handle this?" Patricia asked. I looked up at the hotel, counting floors and windows. Room 1247 would be on the 12th floor, probably facing the parking lot. Perfect for what I had in mind. "We go public," I said. "Maximum exposure, maximum witnesses. Make it impossible for them to spin this as anything other than what it is." Jake grinned. I like this guy. We took the elevator to the 12th floor, Patricia carrying a briefcase that contained enough legal documents to bury both Miles and Lena in litigation for the next decade. Jake had a camera with a flash that could probably be seen from orbit. I had something even more powerful, the moral authority of someone who'd been wronged. I knocked on the door of room 1247 at exactly 2:30 a.m. "Room service," I called in a cheerful voice. The door opened, and Miles Brennan stood there in a hotel bathrobe, looking confused and annoyed. Behind him, I could see Lena sitting on the bed, still fully dressed, a laptop open beside her. "We didn't order," Miles started, then stopped as he recognized me. "Hello, Miles," I said pleasantly. "Mind if we come in? We have some things to discuss." His face went through a fascinating series of expressions: surprise, fear, anger, and finally a kind of desperate calculation. He was probably wondering if he could slam the door and pretend this wasn't happening. "Evan," Lena said from behind him, "what are you doing here?" "Having a conversation with my wife and her business partner," I replied. Patricia thought it would be a good idea for all four of us to clear the air. Patricia stepped into view, and Miles actually stumbled backward. Jake followed, camera already clicking away, documenting everything for posterity. "You can't just barge in here," Miles said, finding his voice. "This is harassment. Invasion of privacy." "Actually," Patricia said, opening her briefcase, "this is service of process. Miles Brennan, you're being served with divorce papers, a restraining order, and a civil lawsuit for alienation of affection." She handed him a thick stack of legal documents while Jake's camera captured every moment. "Lena Mitchell," she continued, "you're being served with a cease and desist order regarding contact with my husband and a civil lawsuit for intentional interference with marriage." Lena took the papers with shaking hands, her lawyer brain probably recognizing the quality of the legal work even through her shock. "This is ridiculous," she said. "You can't sue someone for having an affair." "Actually, I can," Patricia replied. "Alienation of affection is still actionable in this state, and when combined with the financial fraud, the asset hiding, and the conspiracy to defraud spouses of marital property, it becomes quite a substantial case." Miles was reading through his papers, his face growing paler with each page. "These financial claims are outrageous. I never—" "Joint bank account opened October 15th, I interrupted, reading from my own notes. "Initial deposit of $50,000 from your personal account. Apartment lease signed October 22nd. First month's rent and security deposit totaling $8,000. Credit card charges for furniture, electronics, and household items totaling $12,000. All while you were married to Patricia and I was married to Lena." "How did you," Lena started, "know about all of this?" "Because I'm an engineer, Lena. I solve problems for a living. And you two were a very interesting problem to solve." Jake had been quietly documenting everything, but now he stepped forward with a tablet computer. "Mr. Mitchell asked me to prepare a little presentation," he said. "Timeline of your relationship, financial records, hotel receipts, restaurant bills, even some security camera footage from various locations around the city. Very thorough documentation." He started scrolling through images and documents, each one more damaging than the last. Miles and Lena's secret relationship laid out in perfect chronological order, complete with dates, times, and financial transactions. "This is entrapment," Miles said desperately. "You can't use illegally obtained evidence?" "Nothing illegal about it," Jake replied. "Public records, credit card statements, security footage from public places, all perfectly admissible in civil court." Patricia smiled coldly. "Miles, darling, you're thinking like a criminal attorney. This isn't a criminal case. It's a civil matter. Much lower burden of proof, much more flexible rules of evidence." The fight went out of both of them at once. They slumped onto the hotel bed, looking like deflated balloons, finally understanding the scope of what they were facing. "What do you want?" Lena asked quietly. "Justice," I said. "You wanted to steal our lives, so now you get to face the consequences? Miles will lose his law license, his partnership, probably his house. You'll lose your job, your reputation, and any chance of practicing law in this state. The financial settlements alone will bankrupt both of you," Patricia added. "And that's before we get to the professional sanctions and the criminal referrals for fraud." Criminal referrals, Miles's voice cracked. Hiding marital assets is a felony, I explained. So is conspiracy to defraud. The district attorney is very interested in white-collar crime these days. We left them there in that hotel room, surrounded by legal documents and the wreckage of their carefully planned future. Jake got some final photos of them sitting together on the bed, looking like the criminals they'd become. In the elevator, Patricia turned to me with something like admiration. That was beautifully executed, she said. Absolutely ruthless, but beautifully executed. They earned it, I replied. Every bit of it. As we walked through the hotel lobby, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Satisfaction. Not happiness. That would take time to rebuild. But the deep, professional satisfaction that came from solving a complex problem with elegant efficiency. Miles and Lena had thought they were playing a game with amateurs. Instead, they'd walked into a trap designed by experts, sprung at the perfect moment, with no possibility of escape. In engineering, we call that a successful stress test. The system had been pushed to its breaking point, and it had performed exactly as designed. Some problems, it turned out, were very satisfying to solve. 6 months later, I was sitting in my workshop when Tom stopped by with a bottle of beer and an update on the aftermath. Miles Brennan got disbarred last week, he said, settling into my spare chair. Ethics violation, client trust account irregularities, conduct unbecoming, the whole package. What about the criminal charges? Plea bargain. 2 years probation, community service, full restitution. His lawyer was actually pretty good, kept him out of prison. I nodded, not particularly surprised. Miles had been weak, not evil, stupid and greedy, but not genuinely dangerous. And Lena? Lost her law license, obviously. Patricia's lawsuit cleaned her out financially. Last I heard, she was working as a paralegal in another state, trying to rebuild her life. Also, not surprising, Lena was smart enough to recognize when a situation was hopeless, practical enough to cut her losses and start over. I almost respected her for that. Patricia seems to be doing well, Tom continued. I saw her at the country club last week. She's dating that federal judge, Morrison. Seems happy. Good for her. She earned it. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, drinking beer and watching the sun set through my workshop window. The security cameras were still active, old habits, but the house felt different now, quieter but also more peaceful. Any regrets? Tom asked eventually. I considered the question seriously. Miles and Lena had lost everything. Careers, reputations, financial security, their planned future together. It was comprehensive destruction, exactly what we'd intended. No, I said finally. They made their choices. I just made sure those choices had appropriate consequences. And you? What's next for Evan Mitchell, master of revenge? I smiled at that. Back to engineering, I think. Solving problems that don't involve human nature. Much more predictable. Probably safer, too. Definitely safer. After Tom left, I walked through the house one more time, checking locks and turning off lights. It was too big for one person, but I wasn't ready to sell yet. Maybe someday, when the memories had faded enough to let someone else make new ones here. For now, it was enough to know that I'd won. Not just the divorce settlement or the legal battles, but something more important. I'd proven to myself that I wasn't the passive victim Miles and Lena had assumed I would be. They'd wanted to play games with people's lives. I'd shown them what happened when you chose the wrong opponent. In engineering, we have a saying. Every system has a failure point. You just have to apply the right pressure in the right place at the right time. Miles and Lena had learned that lesson the hard way. And I'd learned something too. Sometimes the best solution to a problem is to let it destroy itself. The house was quiet now, but it was the quiet of completion, not emptiness. I'd built something here, not a marriage that had been doomed from the start, but a demonstration of what happened when you underestimated the opposition. It had been a very satisfying project.